But please welcome Stella. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for this opportunity to speak with you today. I want to begin by acknowledging your service, your discipline, your sacrifice, and your strength. I am honored by your presence. I also would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land who are meeting tonight and pay my respects to the elders, past, present, and emerging.
Can we just show some respect, please? Thank you.
I'm running as an independent candidate for Menzies in the upcoming federal election. And I come to you not just as a candidate, but as someone with a deep personal connection to Australia's military history. A connection rooted in Sandakan. I was born in Sandakan on the northeast coast of Borneo. Just 16 kilometers from my home was the Sandakan POW camp. Between 1942 and 1945, over 2,700 Australian and British prisoners were held there by the Japanese. These soldiers were brought from Singapore to build the airstrip under brutal conditions, starvation, beatings, disease, and exhaustion. In January 1945, as the war turned, the Japanese began the Sandakan death marches. Prisoners were forced to march 260 kilometers through rainforests and mountains to Rana. They were split into 9 groups. Those too weak to continue were beaten, shot, or left to die. Of the 2,428 Allied servicemen at the camp that January, only 6 Australians survived. It is widely considered to be the single worst atrocity suffered by Australian servicemen during the Second World War. They survived because they escaped and because local people, my people, hid them, fed them, and risked their lives to help them. My grandmother was a Kadazan Dusun woman, part of the indigenous community of Sabah, and she came from the people who showed humanity in the face of brutality. I went to school next to the very church where the POW stayed on their first night in Sandakan. And yet, we were never taught what happened there. We did not know that the airfield, which became Sandakan Airport, which we still use today, was built by men who suffered and died doing so. This isn't just a story to me, it is also my family's story. I never knew 3 of my 4 grandparents. My father lost both his parents during the war and became an orphan at age 9. It's estimated that 18% of the local population perished in the war. But I share this not to dwell on the past, but to say that our duty to veterans doesn't end with remembrance. It begins there. I have a background in social work and public policy. That means I see systems through the lens of people. I've read the final report of the Royal Commission into Defence and Veteran Suicide, and I was shocked. Shocked by how badly veterans have been failed by the system. Shocked that the system impeded the work of the Royal Commission. There's a culture in parts of defence where vulnerability is seen as a weakness. You know the transition to civilian life is full of risk, relocation, identity loss, family separation. And you know that support is often slow, complicated, or missing. Veterans are overrepresented in mental health issues, homelessness, and chronic illness. Yet we are made to jump through hoops to prove conditions clearly tied to service: PTSD, hearing loss, osteoarthritis, and chronic pain. And let's not forget the toll on families. One man's child was diagnosed with autism. His mother was dying, and he begged for a posting extension. And the reply he got, yeah, dying mothers, disabled kids, I've heard it all, mate. Suck it up. That's just shocking. Our veterans deserve to be treated better than that. While the government has accepted most recommendations from the Royal Commission, several key areas remain under-addressed. There are no clear timelines or accountability structures to ensure timely implementation. The government also rejected equal compensation for training-related injuries, failing to recognize the full scope of service risks. Efforts to address sexual misconduct lack a comprehensive cultural response, and veterans still face delays and barriers in accessing timely mental health care. There have been more than 50 inquiries and reviews relevant to suicide and suicidality among serving and ex-serving ABF members. In point 382, the Royal Commission calls on the Australian public to stay actively engaged, to hold the government accountable, and to ensure the recommendations are properly planned, funded and sustained. I intend to do just that. In 2016, I led a remembrance tour from Melbourne to Singapore to Sandakan, along the route of the death marches. We ended up at Kundasang War Memorial and the last campsite in Rana. We walked to honor the dead, but also to remind ourselves, remembrance without action is not enough. We have a duty to you, not just to thank you, but to back that up with policies that work, support that is real, and systems that respect you. You have done your part, now is our turn. Thank you for your service. Thank you for letting me speak with you today, and thank you for letting me tell my story 80 years after the end of World War II.